Today is April 26, 2021. We're here to interview Mr. Oscar Heck, a World War II veteran. My name is Frank Farmer. This interview is part of the Veterans History Project, a project that's been authorized by Congress. It's overseen by the Library of Congress. And the objective is to interview and record those veterans from World War II to the present time. The Library of Congress archives these, makes them available to the public online, and also encourages local venues such as historical societies and museums, such as the New Smyrna Beach Museum of History that we are in at the present time. So with that background, let me welcome Mr. Oscar Heck, a World War II veteran. Lived in Indiana when he was drafted at age 18, and we're going to get into that story and let Mr. Heck tell us about his experiences in World War II. But before we do that, let me say a few words about the division that Mr. Heck was in, because it was a highly decorated division. It is what we call a storied division, a military unit that has great respect, highly decorated, well thought of. That is a storied division. The 63rd Infantry Division that Mr. Heck was in is indeed a storied division. It was activated in the fall of 1943. It was originally headquartered at Camp Blanding, Florida, then moved to Camp Van Dorn, Mississippi, and had various other camps around. From mid-1943, the plan was to equip the 63rd Division, get it ready to go overseas, and the plan was for it to originally go overseas in mid-1944. But because the war was raging so much in Europe and World War II, as they brought people in to be part of the 63rd Division, they got sent out as replacements for other divisions. So the 63rd Division, which Mr. Heck was in, he was in the 253rd Infantry Regiment, 63rd Infantry Division, did not go overseas until November of 1945. It arrived in Marseille, France, December, 1944. It arrived in Marseille, France in December of 1944. At that point, the German army was retreating back through France up toward Germany. The 63rd Division fought through December, January, through France, finally got into southwest Germany in early 1945. And again, this was some of the coldest records that Europe had suffered in decades. It was some of the heaviest fighting that had occurred as the German resistance stiffened as they went forward. The 63rd Division, as I said, was a storied division, and you only have to look at the decorations of the 63rd Division to understand that. It was awarded 7 Presidential Unit citations. 2 members won the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest honor that the United States gives for action in combat. 50-some won the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest medal. 400 and some were awarded the Silver Star, the third highest. A little over 4,000 were awarded the Bronze Star with V for Valor, with 2 of them going to Mr. Oscar Heck, who sits here beside me. They spent 119 days in combat. They captured over 21,000 enemy soldiers. They suffered over 4,000 battle casualties themselves, with over 800 killed in action. So the last honor for the 63rd Infantry Division was bestowed in 2000 when the U.S. Army Institute of Military History and the Holocaust Memorial Museum recognized the 63rd Infantry Division as a liberating unit. That designation was given to those units which helped to liberate and free concentration camps. And the 63rd liberated 7 concentration camps in southwest Germany and Bavaria. So with that background, Mr. Heck, thank you very much for taking the time to come here today and to be interviewed and tell us about your experience as a teenager who got drafted into World War II, had probably some of the most horrendous experiences in a person's life. And again, thank you for your service in advance, and thank you for being here. We're going to start off by talking about when you were drafted. You were 18 years old. Where did you live at that time, Mr. Heck? And what was your response and reaction? Did you know you were going to be drafted? How did your family respond to it? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we lived on a farm out in Indiana, and well, of course, I guess everybody knew eventually if you're in that age bracket that you were gonna be drafted eventually, and which I was, and went in the service. I don't remember a whole lot of, just other than I went to a place and went to a camp, and then went to a basic training camp, and got my basic training, and that was mostly in Texas and Mississippi. And then after that, why, of course, was all overseas stuff then after basic training.
Well, that was must have been much of a shock. You had probably not traveled much out of Indiana by the time you got drafted, had you?
No, I don't think I've probably ever been out of the state, probably, and any travel was news to me, and it was quite a shock, that's for sure. But once I got over there and got intermixed with, I was at that age, you get intermixed with everybody else, everything seemed to fall into place.
Now, that was probably the first time you talk about intermixed or intermingling with people, that's probably the first time you had seen people from various parts of the country, from the South and from the far West. That was probably your first opportunity to be with those people, isn't it?
That's true.
That must have been a little bit of a cultural shock.
Yeah. The old saying is, I hadn't been out from under my parents' wings hardly at all, so I hardly knew what was going on outside.
And I imagine the other people felt the same.
Yeah.
So they probably the first time they had met somebody from Indiana during that period of time.
Yeah, no doubt, a lot of them.
Now, did you have any brothers or sisters that were also?
I had a brother that went into service ahead of me, actually. And he went into Panama, and I don't think he ever left Panama at all. And I don't know just how long he stayed in, but I don't think he stayed in too long until they turned him loose.
That sounds like pretty good duty, being in Panama as opposed to being in freezing Europe.
Oh, yes. Yes, he was very lucky.
Now, when you went through your training, you got trained in the basic infantry weapons. And I've seen some pictures with you holding some of the weapons that you trained with. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about some of the weapons and what was your impression of them and what you thought of them, because you told me you thought some of them had some fairly strange characteristics. The basic infantryman rifle during World War II was the M1 rifle. Can you tell us about that and what you thought about it?
Well, that was the Army's old standby at that time, and that was your buddy. But when you had him, you hung on to him, and took him everywhere you went. And it was just a good rifle. That's all.
Do you remember if it was easy to jam or clean, or was there any negative features?
No, there wasn't anything. I never had any trouble with the jamming, and of course cleaning is just a normal routine thing. But it was of course, if you used it, it was a job to keep clean. But anyway,
Now I've seen a picture of you holding an M3, what the official nomenclature is, an M3 machine gun. The troops called it the grease gun.
The grease gun,
because it resembled the grease gun that was used in garages to grease cars. So the way it looked, it had a round body and a small thin muzzle that came out of it.
Yeah.
And that was nicknamed the grease gun.
That's the reason they called it, because you held it just like you would a grease gun. But it was a good weapon, but it was so quick. if you pull that trigger, you better not hold it, because if you did, there was 30 rounds of 45 ammunition went out of that thing, and I'm talking about a big hurry.
Now you're holding the you're holding the grease gun. Were you issued a grease gun, or was that
No.
things people just picked up?
No, that was usually there was one of them in every squad, and I didn't carry one most of the time. I carried the M1, thank God. I'm glad, because I still think it was the best all-around weapon, you know. But for quick, yes, the little one was, the grease gun was fine, but it was too quick as far as I was concerned.
Really? So you didn't really care for that
No,
much?
no.
And you talk about the M1. The M1, if I remember, was a 6-shot magazine. Do you
Yeah.
remember that? Thing?
Right.
Was that easy to load? And
Yeah, it was I didn't have any problem with it at all, and it was just your old standby, that's all.
And the other weapon you had told us about that you trained with was the BAR, the Browning Automatic Rifle.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right.
What?
It was a big weapon. It was hard to hold. Usually it had they had a tripod on the end, so you could set them down and lay behind them in such a fashion. But the only trouble was with the BAR. First time I fired it, I was scared to death. I thought, man, that thing's big enough to knock me backwards. Well, it pulled you forward. The recoil was just the opposite. It pulled
Really?
you forwards.
It was a pretty heavy weapon too, wasn't it?
Oh,
About
it was heavy. Yes.
20 pounds.
Yes.
So you.
It was. I don't remember the weight, but it was too heavy to be carrying around as a load every day. That's for sure. But there was usually one or two of them in each squad too. There would not very many of them had it.
Now, when you went in as a private first class, or a private, I assume,
Private.
which everybody goes, which is the lowest rank, and then you come up. But you quickly made staff sergeant, if I remember. Is that right?
Yeah. The reason I did, we were not over there too long until one night we got pinned down and by enemy fire, and it just well, I forgot what I was going to say, but anyway.
But you took some you took some actions during that period of time that you were promoted up
Yeah.
during that period of time. And
Yeah,
I
well-
imagine some of that was because
Some of it was the fact that I took over and nobody wanted to do nothing, you know. And when I first got over there, they asked for volunteers. Well, nobody wanted. Oh, crazy me, you know.
you had not learned yet that you don't
No,
volunteer in the military.
That's right. I hadn't learned that slogan yet. So, anyway, of course, we went on that patrol. It was for patrols. What it was for, to go out and feel the enemy out, see where they were, what they were doing. Well, we found out right quick like. There's 12 of us. He finally got 12 men to go, and we was spread out there and moving along pretty good, and all of a sudden dogs started barking. And I thought, oh man, that'll give our position away, that's for sure. Well, it wasn't our position, it was their position. The enemy had the dogs, and of course that let us know, and all of a sudden bullets started flying. Well, there was a big shell hole right there close, and all 12 of us hit that shell hole where that bomb had exploded, and I think I was on top probably, I don't know. But anyway, somebody said, Jay, are you scared? I said, no, I'm not scared. He said, what's your leg shaking about then? And said my upper leg was just like this. But I wasn't scared. Well, I was too young to be scared. I wasn't worried about nothing. But anyway, we went along there, and I don't know, Oh, the captain come out. Finally, we were pinned down for a while, and the captain finally came out with these captain's bars shining in the sun, and he said, "Come on, you guys, that's Easy Company." Well, about that time, pow! One shot, and he was gone. He was gone. It was Easy Company, all right. He made it easy, and so they shot him right quick like, and we lost a lot of other men at the same time. And it wasn't long until I just jumped up and said, "Come on, let's go, let's go," and not even realizing that was going to be my helper to gain some positions. I didn't know. I just let's go and get this over with. And well, about that time, the sergeant came up to me after we'd settled back down again, and he said, "I guess you know that little axe you just pulled," he said, "gained you a stripe or two." And I said, "No, I didn't know, but anyway, I'll take it. Whatever it is, if it's good, I'll take it."
Well, you not only got a stripe, Mr. Heck, but during your time overseas, you got more than a stripe. You got 2 Bronze Stars with V for valor.
Yeah.
You also earned the Combat Infantry Badge,
Yeah.
a designation given to those infantry members who have been in contact and under fire from enemy action. So you got a little more than a stripe, but you got several stripes. If I remember, a staff sergeant I think has 5 stripes. So you got a number of stripes during that period of time.
Yeah, I did.
Well,
But
now when you prepared to go overseas, you'd finished your infantry basic training, and your unit was going to go overseas finally. Mm-hmm. As I said, you left in November of 1945, mm-hmm. and it took 2 weeks mm-hmm. On a troop transport. These days, when troops go overseas, usually go by plane. But in those days, people got put on a troop ship, got put in the holes of the ship, and I would think it was a pretty miserable existence being on that ship. Tell us about that.
Well, going over, as I recall, going over wasn't quite so bad. But boy, on the return, everybody said, "Oh boy," we was all lined up ready to get aboard ship and head for home, and the 2 queens were the Queen Mary and what was the other queen?
I can't remember myself.
Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth.
I think you may be right.
Anyway, they were both sitting out there, and somebody said, "Hey, look, we're going home on the Queens." Yeah, we did. Here come 2 lines of war brides. Went right on both ships. Took both of those ships. Oh, you talk about some cussing, I'm talking about there was some mad guys. But anyway.
But when you got on the ship and headed back, I can imagine wasn't a whole lot of room on that ship for sleeping, was there?
Oh Lord, no. I couldn't sleep anyway, and the only place I could stay was out on the deck. It took 2 weeks to come home, and I was so hungry. And I'd go to that mess hall line, and the minute I got to that door and that food hit my smell, I was done. That's all. I was. My hunger was.
You lost your appetite.
Yeah. So I'd just head back out on the. If they had an apple or an orange, sometimes they'd have some fruit laying there. I'd get one of those, whatever it was, and out I went. I couldn't stay on that deck because the people were eating and throwing up in their helmets. Oh, you talk about a mess. I never saw such a mess in my life.
I think the rest of us can only imagine what it would be like on that ship now. And in your berthing compartments where you slept, and that was just about as bad, I would imagine.
Well, like I said, I never stayed down there because I couldn't, but I understand it was just as bad because there's the same thing down there. They were throwing up in their helmets and hanging them up on the end of the beds, and It was terrible. Just a miserable sight to come home on.
It sounds pretty miserable.
Yes. Yes.
Being tossed around, being seasick, being confined to close quarters. And I'm sure when you went over there, the troops were very, very happy when they finally landed and so we could get ashore, right? Even though you were getting ready to go into combat and face a formidable German foe, y'all were pretty happy, I imagine, to say, let me get my feet on dry ground.
Just get off of this ship, that's all.
Now, when you did get into France and your unit began to drive north through France, the Germans were still very formidable, and they were probably becoming more formidable because as they retreated, they realized they were losing the war, and their defenses became. What was your opinion of the German soldiers, the German army?
You know, the German soldiers, of course, I'm German also, you know, but not that had anything to do with it, but the German soldiers themselves, I think they realized by that time that the end was getting near. And they wasn't too bad. I mean, of course, you didn't give them too much chance and to shoot you because they'd do it in a heartbeat. But most of them were pretty nice guys, and if you captured one of them, he was nice and never tried to do anything. But most of the time, like I said, they fought. They still fought. And you had to be awful careful to who you took up with and who you didn't take up with, cause but anyway, we got through that all right, and got.
As you advanced northward, the Battle of the Bulge, which was one of the big last battles of the war, occurred in December of 1944. It occurred up in Belgium, of course.
Yeah.
And even though y'all were part, I think, of the 7th Army, you were further south.
Yeah.
But the Germans were still putting up a very stiff resistance at that time, Mr. Heck. And I think that accounts for the fact that that your unit captured over 21,000 German soldiers during that period of time, because as they retreated and they were losing the war, more and more were giving up, even though they had a very solid resistance.
Yeah.
But 21,000 troops, or German troops, surrendered to the 63rd Infantry Division. And as you went forward, and again it was in December and January, which was extremely cold. How are you dressed for that?
Oh, Lord. I don't care. You couldn't put enough on because our rifles were outlined with white tape to break the outline of a rifle. And it was so cold that you couldn't have carried enough clothes, I don't think, to get warm. It was cold. And I don't know how we ever made it through that thing, but we did. And
finally, I assume you got issued overcoats, wool overcoats.
Yeah,
and
we had pretty heavy coats, but and pretty as far as the clothes, as the Army goes, I guess we had about everything they had. I suppose, I don't know.
But it still wasn't enough for you.
Oh no, it was cold. I don't believe I've ever been in such cold even since here. But
well, that's what most of the World War II veterans who were there in December of '44 and January '45, they all kind of remember the cold weather.
It was cold.
It
was cold.
Particular time. And the other thing that the Army troops like is food. How are you fed as you move forward?
All with the K rations. I wasn't too fond of the K rations part of it, but as far as the food, when you got food, it was good food, but there just wasn't that much of it. So lots of times. Now
I assume you talked about K rations, C rations, the combat rations.
Oh, that stuff's.
What do you remember about that?
Not good. What I remember about that stuff is not good, but like I said, it was better than nothing. but that was just about it.
Yeah, I
was just
think
barely.
the sea rations of World War II were designed for 3 days. Now,
Yeah.
they obviously exceeded 3 days. You ate sea rations probably for a week or 2 weeks at a time instead of.
Yeah.
But I think they only had 3 different menus, and the troops got pretty tired of the 3 different, or only 3 different things to choose from with sea rations. Did you ever have field kitchens set up where you were? I mean, with hot food. You ever get any hot food?
I think eventually, as we got closer and closer, so that they could maneuver a little bit with all that stuff, I think, if I remember right, we did. We started getting a few of them, but not enough, not steady.
Yes, sir. Now, you were there on Christmas, 1944.
Mm.
Did y'all get a Christmas dinner that day? Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
Probably did not get a Christmas
I doubt it.
dinner.
I doubt it.
Now, as you advanced into Germany, the resistance got stiffened at that point. What were and you came across German towns that had been captured by the Allies. What was the attitude of the German people that were in those areas that you captured?
Well, surprisingly enough, most of them I ran into was, I guess they come to the thing that it's over, so why fight this thing, you know? So most of them were pretty decent. I thought they were pretty decent people.
Now, your unit, the biggest city they liberated was Heidelberg,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you remember Heidelberg.
Mm-hmm.
Heidelberg, tell us about Heidelberg.
It was a beautiful city. I mean, a beautiful city, and it was that way when we went there. And pretty much, as far as I know, I think it was pretty much that way when we left. Because, however, sometimes that didn't mean too much to the Germans because we went through 2 cities that were. I forget the name of the cities now, but they called them the Twin Cities, and the river ran between them. And we crossed that river, the Rhine River. We crossed that on the pontoon bridges, and it was declared an open city, which was supposed to be no firing. Well, about the time we got in the middle of it, here it come. They started dumping them on us. But so we lost a lot of people right there.
So not every city was spared the destruction or the warfare like Heidelberg.
Oh, no.
I think Heidelberg was not a strategic area for Allied bombing.
It wasn't. They just didn't mean too much to anybody over there, I don't think. But it sure was a beautiful city.
And it remained that way.
It remained that way.
During the war. It survived pretty much intact. As I said, it wasn't a strategic area for the Allies to bomb.
Yeah.
And both for its historical significance and its lack of strategic importance, the Allies pretty much left it alone with the bombing. So did you when you got into cities like Heidelberg, did you get a chance to partake of any of the German culture with food, or everything shut down? Or?
Well, most everything was shut down, of course, and because the Germans didn't have too much themselves by that time. They were getting kind of low on stuff to start with, you know, so we didn't have too much to fool with. But I don't know. It just seems like that places like Heidelberg, that the people were I don't know whether they were thankful that the city didn't get torn up. I don't know what it was, but their whole attitude was the good. I mean, we had no problems in there at all.
Well, they probably were pretty thankful because the rest of Germany got pretty well devastated in bombs. So I'm sure they were thankful about that.
Yeah.
So the war ended. The European war, part of the war, ended in May of 1945, your unit was still over there
Mm-hmm.
at that time, and you became occupation troops
Right.
at that. Was that any better duty? I assume it was much
Yeah.
better duty.
Oh, much better. And we got food then, and our headquarters, to stay in, and this, that, and other. It was pretty good. I kind of enjoyed my time as occupational forces, but not enough to stay. Of course, when they called us all in, and when it was time for a bunch of us to go home, and the guy, he was going to give us Switzerland, pass us to Switzerland, and they was going to give us sound like about anything we wanted. And he come to me and he pointed to me and he said, "What about you?" And I said, "I don't know about the rest of these guys, but I am going home."
I can imagine most of them
Yeah.
said the same thing,
Yeah,
didn't they?
and most of them did.
So when you came home, Mr. Heck, when did you get out of the military? Do you remember that? Was it immediately on your way home or after you got home?
No, I went right home.
And-
When we got off the ship,
It was
my
discharged.
dad picked me up and I was already discharged and went right home. So
And you were when you got home. What was life like back in the
Oh.
United States at the end of the war?
oh God, it was so good to just be able to let down, and not worry about. Of course, like I said, when I was there, I didn't worry about nothing. I really didn't. I was too much of a kid, I guess. I said maybe that's the reason I came back, because I didn't worry about nothing, and I don't know.
So
I don't know.
Well, you probably thought, like most 18, 19 years old, that you're going to live forever and immortal, and nothing's going to bother you.
Yeah,
that
I guess so, because I've said many a time I wouldn't give 10 cents to go through it again. And I definitely don't want never go through the war again. That's for sure. But it's just I don't know. It was different even when you got home and got out of service. It took you a while to get it out of you, and to wear it out, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think that's true for all people that have faced heavy combat, such
Yeah.
as yourself. It takes a while for that to ever leave, and probably part of it never does leave.
Well, when I first come home, nobody would let it leave, because everybody that got you cornered, tell me about this, tell me about that, and I'd say, look, I don't talk about my Army service. I'm not interested in letting you know, because I don't even tell my own family. I said, what's in there, I'm trying to get out, not put more in. I said, I'm trying to get rid of it. And I was. And I have forgotten a whole lot of it, but of course there's parts of it I'll never forget.
Well, with your record, Mr. Heck, of combat, and your record of your Bronze Stars with the V for Valor, and your combat infantry badge, your European occupation ribbon that you have, you have quite a record, sir. And telling this story about your experiences of World War II, I think will mean a lot to the people who view this, and help to understand what you and millions of other Americans went. We had 16 million Americans in uniform in World War II. They will understand that much more. Let me ask you another question. On your hat, you have a lapel pin of the 63rd Infantry Division, nicknamed the Blood and Fire Division.
Blood and fire.
Blood and Fire.
Some of them called it blood and guts.
Blood and guts. And I don't know if you knew where that same motto came from, but it came from a remark that Winston Churchill made
Yeah, I read
at
that.
Casablanca. I think it was in January of 1943 that Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt met to discuss the war and the conduct of the war. And Churchill said that the Allies would rain, blood and fire upon the heads of the German Empire for starting the war and what they had done with the invasion of Poland. And that became the motto of the 63rd Infantry Division. And here is a shoulder patch that I'm going to give to you, Mr. Heck, that was worn on Class A uniforms, and it has the insignia of the 63rd Infantry. It has people can't see it on the camera, but it has a picture of a sword pointing up with a drop of blood on the tip, and in the background is red with flames, hence the blood and fire.
I said before I left the house, I told my daughter, I said, I wished I had my uniform. I'd put it on because I'm just about the size I was.
Oh my God, that'd have been tremendous. So I'm gonna give you that to take, sir, and I'm also gonna give you. We didn't talk much about it, and you said you weren't aware of it, but in January, for a brief few weeks, as your unit advanced closer to Germany, your 253rd Infantry Regiment got assigned to the 44th Infantry Division for about 3 weeks. You said you never knew it. Probably the troops in the field didn't know it. I said probably just the 2-star and the 3-star generals. But we thought it'd be appropriate, since you were also in the 44th Infantry Division, to give you their shoulder patch.
Well, thank
you. It's 2 4s back to back, and this is the Class A uniform shoulder patch of the 44th Infantry Division, Mr. Heck. So
44th Infantry
Yes, sir.
Division. No, I didn't know anything about this till I started talking to you.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, Mr. Heck, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and give us some of your story today. I know that some of it probably brings up unpleasant memories, and we certainly understand that. But we think that people seeing this would appreciate it, would learn more about what the soldiers of World War II, men such as yourself that left home at a very young age, put everything aside, went to war, and many didn't come back, of course, during World War II.
Yeah.
Your unit, I said the 63rd Infantry Division, suffered 4,000 casualties and almost 900 killed in action. So it was a hard time.
We lost a lot of men, I know that.
We
lost
did.
a lot of men.
But I want to thank you for taking the time to come and being part of this interview. And I want to thank you again for your service to this country, sir, and for being part of the greatest generation. We thank you very much for that.
Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate being able to be. I just hope that it will help somebody, some people, some of the public. I hope it'll do somebody some good.
Well, it will, sir. I think it will absolutely. People will enjoy it. So, again, thank you very much, Mr. Heck.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for being here for this interview, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again.
I just hope it never happens again.